while Senate Democrats consider the possibility of implementing a carve-out to take care of voting rights legislation in the Senate, while Republicans block every chance possible, Senator Marco Rubio took to the floor to argue in favor of the Republicans' legislation across the country when it comes to voting rights.
Talk about defending democracy? Let's talk about the Americans, real people, who are afraid to donate to a political campaign, to put a bumper sticker on their car, to tell people who they voted for. They're afraid because they don't want to get canceled, they don't want to get boycotted, they don't want to get harassed. So they're afraid. They don't want to get smeared.
While ignoring the fact that Republicans have implemented tons and tons of anti-voting legislation across the country in multiple states, Rubio wanted to focus in on what the real Americans are doing and defending real democracy. Because, of course, during his speech earlier, he brought up things about January 6th, how it wasn't such a big deal, but it kind of was a big deal. But it's not enough of a big deal for us to do anything about it or actually pay attention to the fact that the big lie surrounding 2020 election that had a historic turnout is something that Republicans are now pushing back on, because the fewer people vote, the better chances Republicans have. And that's just a fact. Senator Rubio talks about Americans being canceled. Got to bring back that one, that empty rhetoric of people being canceled. So regular Americans being canceled for donating $50, $100 to their political candidate of choice. Are they being canceled for putting yard signs in front of their house or for bumper stickers? Where is this happening? But there are things happening in Republican states where they're limiting people's abilities to vote on a large scale. They want to limit people's rights while ignoring what happened just a year ago when Donald Trump's foot soldiers descended on the Capitol and tried to overturn an election. Now, of course, they had no idea what they were doing. Donald Trump never has any idea what he's doing. But the point is chaos. The point is anger and violence and riling people up. That was ultimately very successful that day. But ever since then, these establishment folks, these politicians have used that same energy, acting like they're against the violence of that day, but using that same energy to implement policies in multiple states that are built off of the lie that 2020 was the biggest fraud in history. You know what 2020 was? 2020 was one of the biggest turnouts in history. That is the problem that Republicans have with that. Now, the remedy that they have to more Americans voting is stopping Americans from voting, but very specific Americans from voting. So no, they don't say things like, oh, we're going to get those black folks to make sure they don't vote anymore. We're going to make sure that the elderly, the young folks don't vote anymore. No, you implement policies that automatically are geared to focus on those groups and act like, we're just trying to help out democracy here, while we're just afraid in our corners and worried why people are criticizing us. You know what talking about cancel culture is for many of these folks? They're talking about accountability. They're talking about running from accountability for their acts, for their actions, for their agendas that usually are empty outside of restricting people from voting or for riling people up for violence or trying to make them the next martyr. This is the agenda of many Republicans, while they feign that they're in the corners hiding and are worried about the cancel culture. How many people were killed from cancel culture? So no, Senator Rubio, registering people to vote and allowing them to vote by mail are not radical agenda policies. They're actually American policies. But implementing laws that would keep people from voting across the country, those things are radical agenda policies. And they're being pushed very, very strongly by the Republican Party right now.